This show is brought to you by SalCal Real Estate Connections.
Welcome to the Telescope View. We're here tonight with the author of The Final Revelation, The Sun Project, co-host Rick Teles, and of course my favorite E.T. Steve Parker, and of course Larry Mangello. And tonight's show, Rick, is going to be kind of a different offbeat thing with us, but it's a question that's asked all the time. Are extraterrestrials a threat to the human race?
Yeah, you get that question all the time. I think some people don't want an answer.
I like when he says this one's going to be offbeat.
Yeah,
like
I know.
The rest of them are
because most of the time we are never offbeat.
No, not us.
Right down the line. Yeah, you hear that a lot. And of course, if you are involved with what we call the UFO pop culture, not that the rest of us aren't a little off either, but UFO pop culture, every day somebody's being abducted or shot with a ray, that type of thing. And you know, I don't want to be a spoiler, but you can explain some of this. But you know, again, the people I spoke to were high-ranking military intelligence people who had access to all kinds of different classified reports, who knew everything there was to know that the government knew about, you know, the topic of UFO extraterrestrial life. They were saying that contrary to the UFO pop culture, there has never been, and there does not appear to be, an immediate threat from our what we call ET visitors. Okay, and what they said is, according to what they call a MAGIC report. Now, we heard MAGIC before. You had the Majestic 12.
Yeah.
And they talked about MAGIC. MAGIC is a multi-agency joint intelligence committee. There's hundreds of them, so it's nothing special about
That's
them.
what MAGIC stands for. So could you say that one more time?
MAJIC, Multi-Agency Joint Intelligence Committee.
Okay.
And that could be Air Force, Army, Navy. It could be CIA, Navy, where, okay, that type of thing. They did a strategic assessment of the situation. There's a lot of strategic assessments. You'll have a strategic assessment of the extraterrestrial thing. AATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, they did a strategic assessment of what was going on with that for the Pentagon. You get those. Now, according to them and what these guys said they read, I'm going to read it so you know exactly what the assessment said. It said, no U.S. aircraft or materiel has ever been intentionally destroyed by extraterrestrials, and there is no official record of any aggressive acts towards humankind. Now, this is with the concession that this life does exist. There is an extraterrestrial presence. They said it's never happened. They said, however, it is true that some aircraft were damaged or destroyed due to pilot error while exceeding their aircraft's flight capabilities in pursuit of ETs, chasing them when they're told not to. The aircraft can't do that, especially in the 50s and the 60s. And they said, and there have been some incursions over military installations. There was a new report out the other day. I didn't bring it with me. They said it happens 2 or 3 times a month over military installations.
Oh, my
I'm going to have to get a hold of that report.
Oh, my dear.
And any other incident was a result of crashed or malfunctioning extraterrestrial technology and was not an intentional hostile act. And some people are going to come out and say, oh, yeah, they do this. Well, we don't really have a record.
No.
Yes, even advanced people can have technology that messes up and crashes or hits somebody, or you can try chasing them. But we don't have any evidence, at least from what these guys say, who are high-placed individuals who I believe. They're going to tell me the real story, not the story they tell everybody. They say, it's really not really happened.
You know, Rick, we all know that the Hollywood version is always, you know, they're portraying these people to be you know, something that's going to harm somebody.
Well, from the 50s until the 70s, until we met, you know, Close Encounters of the Third Kind of ET, aliens were always bad, okay? But now that I told you that there's nothing to worry about, I'm going to tell you there is, okay? Well, the interesting part of this is, and of course this is what you'd expect from somebody like the Pentagon or somewhere else, they said at the same time, the strategic assessment advises, and I quote, even under such benign circumstances, one must remain vigilant that such a relationship does not turn malevolent.
They could.
Okay.
Yep.
And we also know that programs aimed at developing weapons to protect against such a threat have been ongoing for years. The original HARP project, all right, HARP, high altitude, high frequency active auroral research project. It was up in Alaska. They would heat the atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
And they could actually change the weather. It's in the patent. Go and look up the patent. Everything I say, you'll read in there. They believe that part of that was a weapons capability, because it was also shown in the patent that by disturbing the atmosphere at a certain way, aircraft couldn't fly through it. They'd run into it and they'd lose all lift
Is
they
this
dropped.
like the Star Wars technology they were doing?
Not
No.
yet, not yet.
Not
It's coming.
yet.
That's coming.
It became part of it. The whole ionization of the atmosphere
Okay.
and heating it, that became part of the Star Wars project. But this is right in the patent that anybody can go and read. Just look up the HARP patent. You'll read all of this. Go to like page 2, and you'll see that this was part of it. And it's for real. It's for real. We know that the Soviet Union, China have huge HARP arrays now, or what they're HARP-type antennas. And then again, what they do is they heat the atmosphere through ionization, and it can change the weather, and it can also change flight capabilities of aircraft and that type of stuff. So we know that that was one of the things that we were doing. The other thing that they said, and some of us know this, that some of the largest black budget programs are aimed at creating subterranean command and control centers.
Give me the black program again.
The black budget is the budget that we never see.
Okay.
Never
okay.
seen
And
it.
it's funded in a lot of different ways, not always the way you think it's
Not,
funded.
you can't trace it.
For top secret subterranean command, control, and survival centers. We have a survival center for the Congress. Why? I don't know. Really, that probably should be the first to go, but anyway.
Yeah.
And we also know the interesting thing with all this is recently with AATIP again, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, we did a whole program on some of the projects that they were doing.
Yes.
Space-based laser systems, all these different things that were aimed at non-terrestrial threats, that they wouldn't be
Well, they were-
necessary for a terrestrial type of, even a missile threat.
They were funding for that.
They were funded, and that
But-
ended in 2012.
In reality, though, the real source or the real threat, they didn't want to talk about.
Right. And again, and I'm not here to talk about the book, but the book, The Final Revelation of Sun Project, we have a whole discussion in there of what was going through the minds of the people in charge at the time, and why should we be doing this, and why shouldn't we be doing this, and what are the issues we're trying to deal with, and how they addressed it, or how they thought they should be addressing it. So there's a lot to this. They put a lot of thought into it, so it's not as off the wall as you think it might be. I mean, and now we have the NEOWISE, which looks for things like asteroids that could possibly hit us, or that type of thing. They have defense systems for that too. So all this stuff has been talked about for many, many years. And what if something goes wrong? Okay, in support of some of this stuff that we're talking about, all right? You know, first of all, we have some of the posters from the 50s, Earth versus the Flying Saucers. And then, of course, Mars Attacks by Warner Brothers in 1996.
Great one.
I mean, of course we know they must be evil. Okay? They're
I
going to
like the
come.
fact that he's holding a Kong.
It kind of looks like that, right?
Looks like a Kong.
It's interesting, though. You look at the alien, you look at the hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't put makeup on the hand. I just noticed that right now. In September of
He is an ant? No, he's not.
in September of 1987, Reagan made what people thought was a very unusual presentation to the United Nations. And there's more to this story. He had seen some things, and he asked his people. He had seen some movies, and he had seen some things like I think E.T. was one of them. And he went to his people and he said, "Is any of this possible?" And as the story goes, he expected the answer to was no. They didn't give him that answer.
No.
They said, "Well, So he wanted to know more about it, and apparently he got more. He had more knowledge, and Reagan is one of the ones who was given what we call the keys to the kingdom. He was given the whole story. But at the United Nations in September of 1987, a lot of people thought what he said was kind of odd. Why did he say this? And what he said was, "I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world." Okay? And he was not referring to an immediate danger, but the potential threat
Sure.
from something else.
We'd all come together.
We'd all come together. And they thought it was really odd that he presented that at that point. I think E.T. was one of the things he said, I think, then later on, some of the people were disturbed by Independence Day, but that was more in the 90s. He was not referring to an immediate threat. But then you have Stephen Hawking. Everybody remember Stephen Hawking? Okay. He really is concerned about this. Okay, and he felt that any face-to-face or any real interaction between us and an alien race would end poorly for us. And he felt this very strongly. And first of all, he believed they existed. Stephen Hawking believed they existed. And he's a noted, physicist and cosmologist. Let me say what he said. he voiced his concerns about them missing us moving with them, but he said, an advanced alien civilization would have no problem wiping out the human race in the same way a human might wipe out a colony of ants.
Yep.
Wow.
He said that, he went on to say, we don't know much about aliens. We know more than what he was revealing, but we know about humans. He said, if you look at history, contact between humans and less intelligent organisms have often been disastrous for those organisms' point of view. He said, and encounters between civilizations with advanced versus primitive technologies have gone badly for the less advanced. We saw that during World War II when some of our technologies, especially the South Pacific, we came across these tribes who had never seen an airplane. They had never seen a ship. They didn't know any of this. It ended badly for a lot of them. That tends to be what happens. And this is what Hawking believed. He said, a civilization that might be looking at our message could be billions of years ahead of us. And they might look at us the same way we see bacteria. And he said this is his concern. He goes, they would have no problem. We're not important. We're like a colony of ants that they could wipe us out. And if you go on and you talk about some of the other theories that we got of how we got here, that this may all be a grand experiment on the part of some intelligent, incredibly advanced race, they could push a button and this could all be done. It's over, okay? And of course people say, that's not possible. No, of course, human beings, we're so smart and we're so good, we're the top of everything. Well, we're not that smart. And like I think we had talked about this before, I mentioned just the other day, there was an announcement of a project with NASA creating their own genomes, their own genetic strands, and what they're trying to do is simulate what they think alien life could be. Well, wait a minute. If NASA's doing this, look it up. If you don't believe me, go online and look it up. Go to NASA JPL. If we're already simulating human genomes, and we're doing more than that, you've heard of genetic engineering.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's how we got Larry.
Yes. If you're looking at some of that, we're already doing that. We're changing genes. What will we do in 100 years? What will we do in 1,000 years? Could we create an organism like this? Absolutely. It'll be change a few of this, and you're gonna, it'll be, depends on what kit you want to get. The kid will be asking for Christmas, I want to build a human kit or build an alien kit, and their parents will say you want the big one or the small one, and it'll all be a matter of price, and the kid will get it and build something alive.
Well, that's like, with the dinosaurs. When we go back, previous shows, we've gone back to, the Aztecs and a lot of the old, the old things. We don't know how many times this has come around.
People have said there's been many civilizations before what we even know about, and that the Earth has turned around a number of times. Now, okay, if that guy, you're kind of worried that maybe we are created by something, that there is something out there, and they could do away with us. And like one person said, yeah, they have no reason to fear us because there's nothing here to fear. Some scientists disagree with Hawking.
They disagree, that's right.
One scientist did. She disagreed with Hawking. She was the head of SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And she disagreed. She goes, I disagree with Stephen, respectfully. If aliens were to come here, it would be simply to explore. Excuse me. Considering the age of the universe, we probably wouldn't be their first extraterrestrial encounter either. If aliens were to visit Earth, that would mean they would have technological capabilities sophisticated enough not to need slaves, food, or other plants. Well, I don't buy that part of it, because why are we going out into space? One is to explore. What's another reason why we want to go to some of these planets or even an asteroid?
Oh, prove that we can exist there.
Prove that we can exist there. We want to mine them. So other races may want to mine this. There was stories, ancient aliens, or the ancient astronaut theory, had this theory, and they talked about that alien races came here, they wanted to mine gold, they needed gold, they wanted the gold dust. And what were they going to do with the gold dust? They were going to scatter it in their atmosphere because they were having the same issue we had with greenhouse gases and global warming on their planets. This was many, many years ago before anybody thought about this. Okay, last year or the year before, I think it was last year, NASA came out with some of their ideas to eliminate global warming. And what do you think one of them was? Scattering gold dust into the atmosphere.
Well, there's been projects, Rick, in the past with this, putting particles in.
They've put
in the atmosphere.
Different types of particles, ammonia. They've tried a number of different things. So they could be here to mine this. They could be here to this. But she's saying, they may come down, do what they need to do, and say, "How you doing? Catch you later. We're gonna, we're headed out the other way," because we're not ready yet.
Let's catch you next trip.
The interesting thing here, and we've talked about this before, is over the last 18 months, there has been a definite increase. And Larry, I think Larry states it right, embracing this whole concept of interest in the UFO phenomenon
Yep.
and extraterrestrial life. Huge increase. It can't be denied. Okay, and I've got NASA's announcement that the search for extraterrestrial life will now be a key component of every mission. They want to teach this in grades 4 through 12. They're teaching teachers now to teach this concept that we need to look for the
NASA,
extraterrestrial life.
yes.
This is NASA.
Yeah.
They also want to include in that this whole project they're doing on creating their own genomes. They want that to be included in there as part of the search for alien life.
Well, they're just trying to, I think, get people open in their mind of, there could be life on other planets.
But
Might
NASA
be-
for years has said it didn't exist. They said it can't exist in this solar system, that these are all rocky, dead planets, and all of a sudden it exists.
No,
Saturn,
it exists.
Jupiter, are the moons of Jupiter.
gas and stuff. Yeah.
They're all wrong. They're talking about organic compounds. They're all wrong, and now they're coming around saying we were all wrong. Life does exist, and we need to keep looking. NASA Ames research scientist Silvano Colombano, we talked about him. He
Yes.
wrote a white paper
The white paper.
saying
Oh, yeah.
interstellar travel is now capable as possible. That we need to take more seriously these reports that we get of extraterrestrial life, UFOs. We need to not. Most of them are going to amount to nothing, 99.9%. But we need to take them more seriously. NASA Ames Research Center. That's where he works. The Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. There's two scientists there. When Oumuamua, that rock came
Yeah, oh,
through,
yeah.
they are absolutely convinced and standing by the fact that they believe that is an extraterrestrial artifact of some type. It could have been something that somebody created millions of years ago, and they let it go off into space and it floated through space. But they said there's no question. It came into our solar system, took a right-hand turn. It is not what we call, it did not have an elliptical orbit, which is,
Or it could be watching us.
or it could be watching.
Now, when was this?
This was earlier this year.
Early this year.
And like they said, it didn't have the proper trajectory. We've never seen a trajectory like this. These things can't turn, nor can they speed up when they come through certain places. And it did all of this. And they said it could have been a remnant. They said it could have been something where they do something like we do, is stick a probe on an asteroid and let it fly because we can't power it all the way up in the universe.
Does it make sense?
They're absolutely
all.
convinced of that. We have scientists on the Human Genome Project who, after working on that project for a number of years, are absolutely convinced that the genetics, our genomes, were created artificially somewhere else. These are top-level scientists for different groups. We have the AATIP program, Advanced Aerospace Threat Investigation Program, again, embracing the concept of extraterrestrial possibilities, one after another. And then, of course, the Navy a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
This stunned everybody because although we know the Navy had information on UFOs and extraterrestrial, they never said anything. They were, even the guys I talked to who were top-ranking Navy,
Yeah.
he wouldn't talk about the Navy. He'd talk about the Air Force
Yeah.
and the Army and intelligence reports.
We don't know what they have down there.
He wouldn't talk about the Navy stuff.
Well, when you see this stuff, when you see this stuff in Hollywood, do you, anything that, out there ever about, what does Spielberg think? What does George Lucas think? How they feel about extraterrestrial? We've seen the movies, but,
Spielberg absolutely believes. Lucas absolutely believes. There's a number of them out there. People like Dan Aykroyd absolutely believe. We talked about, at one of our previous shows, Walt Disney.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole thing where they were trying to get him to show some videos, and then they decided maybe it wasn't such a good idea. When you look at this and you look at the Navy now relaxing their guidelines, making it easier for their pilots to report on things they don't see. Now, obviously, some of this is we're looking at stuff from Russia and China. We have such things as hypersonic drones now. We don't know if they have them. We have them. Can come, can go. We know they want to look at that, but they want them to look at unexplained aerial phenomena. So the question is, what's behind this dramatic turnabout? All of a sudden, why? We're learning more. We're getting more information from Mars rovers, space probes. We now have non-government entities going into space.
And
It's hard to keep that quiet.
beside that, we have the government now talks about a space force.
Right.
Why all of a sudden now?
Yeah, and that's what they mentioned that in the whole Navy. Now, the Navy's also said we're going to get reports, but we're not going to share everything. We're still not going to share everything.
Well, look at what's happening right now with the head of Amazon with $1 billion project to try to put, so we can live on the moon.
Yep.
This is the stuff that's.
A lot of people didn't know that one thing that Trump did is he gave all the money back to NASA. We're going to be back on the moon this year, and then people on the moon by 2022 or 2024. And that's going to be the staging area to go to Mars. And NASA is thrilled. Now, I've heard all the people. I'm familiar with all the stories about hostile aliens, alien acts, as well as defensive responses from alien craft. And I did hear stories from these guys saying that aliens or extraterrestrials admitted there's multiple races out there. Some could sneak through. You never know. But we've heard about the alien abduction syndrome. Every day in the news we hear about this. We heard about alien races that aren't so benign. And then we have people writing some big writers saying, well, we got to worry about this because UFOs are a navigational hazard in the air. Well, they've never hit anything. I've heard about those. Yeah, there might be something to them, but they're not as prevalent as what everyone would believe. We firmly believe that they're not a problem, but they're here to watch. They're the same thing that we're doing. We wouldn't show ourselves immediately. Like one of these guys say, is we pose no threat to them whatsoever. Their ability to evade and overcome our technology is absolute. So there's no need for an aggressive action. And one thing they also said was, if they do something, what are we going to do about it? You know, during the Manhattan Project, creating the first atomic bomb.
First bomb.
There was a lot of unidentified UFO or unidentified object UFO sightings over Los Alamos, and that really shook them up. And they tried to investigate that. And it was interesting. The person they brought to investigate it was a naval aviator. It wasn't like Army Air Corps or whatever. Anyway, long story short, in the end, they decided it was not Russia that was doing that. But they also decided that whatever this technology was, there was nothing we could do about it, so just forget it. Don't worry about it. And that's what they didn't do through the entire Manhattan Project. They didn't worry about it. Yet it happened all the time. I'm not going to say daily, but there were quite a few reports about that.
Now, let me ask you a question, Rick. In this day and age, do we hear more about actual sightings or no?
We're not hearing as much about sightings. I think part of that's because people are more informed. We can do a show sometime of what we look for when we actually look for a UFO report. And let me bring in the map, the aeronautical map for this area. Let me show you the airports, and let me show you the air routes. Let me show you what's in Connecticut. Chances of you're going to see most often an airplane, a drone, a sky lantern. The other thing is that, as I was told, is these things produce absolute stealth capability. If they don't want to be seen, they're not going to be seen.
Not going to be seen.
And years ago, people say that's not possible. Well, first of all, they used to say, well, they can't avoid radar. And they used to say that in the 70s. Well, we were avoiding radar in the 70s with the F-117. You can't avoid radar. We know that stealth is now possible. We know that absolute stealth is now possible. We have an airplane you can't see. You're telling me they don't have this? And what I was told is most of the time when something was seen, it was malfunctioning technology that we weren't supposed to see it. Oh, by the way, you don't really need navigational lights to fly through space.
You know, and of course, sometimes we're spotting things that are ours.
Well, that's the other thing is we're over the years. A lot of times they may have been spotting a U-2 and SR-71 aircraft. Today we're spotting a lot of stuff that's ours. And notice how the reports all start to become the same. A triangle-shaped object that was dark and blotted out the stars and turned very slowly. We've lost some of the good reports that you heard years ago. I saw this object. It was non-terrestrial, a non-ballistic movement. It was going in a couple of it would go in different directions, or it would blink out here and show up over here. That's a good report. That I want to know about, even though it could still be our technology. Today it's the same report. I mean, when I hear those, I'm not saying it's not true, but I've heard too many triangle reports. I've heard too many three lights. Most people, if I ask them, do you know what the collision beacon on a new airplane looks like? Well, no, but I've seen most of the aircraft. Well, now they're amber. Some of them are amber. And now instead of 2 lights, you have 4 lights. And some the aircraft, or you're watching a helicopter, or you're watching a drone, that type of thing. So the question is, what are we facing here? Are we facing our friends here? Now, we have 2 friends here. Now, the thing that we're talking about here, one is, what do these aliens look like? We've done shows on this. What do the aliens look like? Well, we've been told they look a lot like us, like Semjay's here. She's supposedly an alien. Semjay's here. And then, of course, we have their buddies who they created, which are these aliens.
Well, we're going to have to save that for the next show.
Yes,
oh,
we are.
absolutely. Yeah. Rick,
Thanks,
I have
Rick.
to say, this subject tonight was just over the top.
Oh, it definitely is.
And I'm sure we're going to be getting into more conversations about this. And please, I want everybody to email us at theviewshow@aol.com. And we want to hear from you, and we want to do some presentations, Rick. And believe me, tonight's show was just fantastic.
And not just that you're all crazy, because we hear that all the time.
We'll come out and be crazy for you.
I want to thank you. I want to thank the crew completely. Billy and Kat and Ricky, you're all the greatest, I'll tell you. Thank you and good night.